Okay, trustees, welcome to the August 4th board workshop. Our first item is actually to retire into closed session. So we will be doing that and I'll return shortly.
Call us to order, takes the closed session over.
Okay.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. The time is 3:03 p.m. and I call this meeting of the Georgetown Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that the notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code 551. The board will go into closed session, as Dr. Pavel stated, under the authority of Texas Government Code 551. Subchapter D, the board will go into closed session at 3:04 p.m. to discuss personnel pursuant to section 551.074. Should be back. I don't know. Shouldn't be long. 15 minutes, you think? Yeah, give or take?
Yeah.
Yeah, so give us 15 minutes, we'll be back. All right, good afternoon, everybody. The time is now 3:13 p.m. and I call this meeting of the Georgetown Independent School District back to order. We originally called to order at 3:03 p.m. and the board went into closed session at 3:04 p.m. to discuss personnel pursuant to section 551.074. Got a little out of order on the agenda, so we're going to do pledges real quick and then we'll flip back. Is there any public comment? There is no public comment, so we'll acknowledge there is none and then move on. Join me, please.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
All right. With nobody signed up for public comment, we will close that portion of the public hearing at 3:14 and we'll move on to action items.
All right, Mr. President, trustees, pretty significant day for us. Months of work have gone into not only balancing the budget, but using that balanced budget for our HR and finance teams to be able to present a compensation plan to the trustees for your consideration. So I'm going to hand it off to Jennifer Hanna and Amanda Johnson.
All right. Thank you, Board of Trustees and our community members, teachers, staff, for the patience in this compensation plan recommendation to you all. Jennifer and I know that it feels like a long time. We typically pass one in May, but really wanted to get our heads around House Bill 2 and understand what that meant for us, mostly so that we could consider a balanced budget while also recommending the best compensation plan that we could for all of our staff. So a little bit of clarification around House Bill 2, I want to talk about that initially, is specifically around teacher pay. House Bill 2 is available to those who teach 50% of the day and are PEIMS coded an 087. A little bit of clarity around that. An 087 is one of 67 TEA classification codes that are required for every single position in the district. And so every position in the district has a classification code based on the capacity at which they work. 087 happens to be that for our classroom teachers. So House Bill 2 requires both of those things. One, they teach 50% of the day, and two, they're PEIMS coded in 087. We are still waiting on some classification codes to be really spelled out by TEA, hoping to hear something about that by the end of the month of September. So actually not August, August just started, but by the end of September. Should there be some changes to the way that the classification codes are, the way they currently are versus anything that comes up that's new, should it change any of the recommendations that we make today in that teacher pay scale, then we would most likely come back to you for an amended compensation plan. Just a couple of other reminders here. Completed teachers that qualify for teacher retention allotment. Those that have completed years 3 and 4 will qualify for $2,500. Those that have completed years 5+ will receive $5,000. I want to back up for just a second. There are 2 positions that we'll talk about today in regards to our compensation plan that have previously been on our teacher pay scale that we will move off of our teacher pay scale this year according to the definition that is up here for House Bill 2 qualification. That is our librarians and our instructional coaches. Through the conversations over the last couple of months, we spent quite a bit of time figuring out where we could place them on our pay scale to validate the work they do, place them in a position where they are receiving a nice compensation increase and not feel like being pulled off of the teacher pay scale would be a punishment, if you will. So with that, our instructional coaches will receive anywhere from a $1,200 to a $1,400 pay increase. That's about a 2% increase overall for that position. Our librarians will receive anywhere from right at our lowest will be $1,987 up to $2,400. And that really varies just based on years of experience. That's about a 3.4% average increase for our librarians based on where they'll be placed on the pay scale.
Can I ask a question about teacher retention? Is there a lot of paperwork or anything, hoops that the teachers have to jump through to qualify for that?
No, ma'am.
They just need to be here for that length of time?
That's correct. They have to have completed those years, not entering those years.
The paperwork is going to be on the districts.
Okay.
All right, so the teachers that were not included in that were our starting teachers in the years 1 and 2. So we are recommending our 0-year teacher starting pay bump from $56,500 to $57,000, and then we'd like to add for years 1 and 2 a $1,000 pay increase in addition to that. And then all teachers will receive a step increase for their years of service. With the overall recommendation that includes 0, 1, and 2 years, and then also with the TRA included, that's about a 6.7% increase for our teachers. All right, this is just a snippet of our new salary pay scale. We've included 2 additional columns, the GISD board approved increase, which it just impacts that 1 and 2. You'll see year 0 starts at $57,000, that's our beginning year pay, and then the $1,000 would be what we would pay out of $199, and then you'll see the $25,000 and $500 for those that qualify for TRA. It does not stop at year 6, it does go all the way down to year 30. Just wanted to give you a snippet of that. All right, our recommendation for all other staff is a consideration of a 2% increase at midpoint. That includes those 5 areas there: administrative, professional, and technical instructional aides, office and technical and auxiliary. That covers pay grades 100 through 500, so that is everybody else in the district. Specifically, we're asking that instructional aides in pay grade 302 and 303, those are the instructional aides that work with our high need students and work closest to kids in the classroom. We're asking for a $1 increase to the minimum pay scale there. Our office and technical, we're asking for a 50-cent increase to minimum pay scale. Auxiliary, you'll see a 50% increase recommendation to minimum pay. The exception there is our bus drivers. We're asking for a $1 minimum pay increase for them.
Amanda, is that can you clarify for the group? Is that in addition to the 2% or on top of, or in place of the 2%?
In addition. So, for example, our pay grade 302 that currently sits at $16 an hour minimum, it would bump to $17. So that means the midpoint bumps as well, and they're 2% of that midpoint. Good question. Our administrative support group, pay grades 405 and 406, I'm specific about that because those are the 2 pay grades administratively in that pay grade that work on our campuses. We're asking the majority of those positions, we're asking that they move from a 7.5-hour day to an 8-hour day. Currently they earn comp time between that 2.5 hours each week, and so it'd be easier for us to work that in the budget and plan for that time each year, or each week, each year for the budget, and then also provides an additional increase into their paychecks each time they receive one over just the comp time accruing. Athletic stipends have not seen an increase since 2018. There's a recommendation for an increase to some of those based on our TASB review, not all, but some of those.
How much?
How many?
How much of an increase?
Do you remember what the total increase? I think it was 62,000, if I'm remembering.
I'm remembering 46, so
Yeah,
somewhere between
we can follow up with that
Yeah,
information
yeah.
too.
Well, just I know I coached, you know, and it's pennies on the dollar.
Yeah,
The amount of time you spend coaching
Yes,
and away. So if we have an increase since 2018,
But the increase is to align us to basically surrounding districts at this point.
correct.
Yes, sir. We want to be able to say our stipends are competitive to any of our neighbor districts that touch us, right?
Yeah, all we did was take them to market.
Right.
We did not,
We've
yeah.
been behind because we've,
That's right.
since 2018. And so those adjustments were varied by position based off of what that market is.
Correct.
It's not across the board.
Yeah.
And I assume that's true for all of these adjustments, is where, so that we can be competitive with every district.
That's correct, yeah. All right, so the next item there is our SPED and dyslexia teachers. I think you're aware that last year we started asking our dyslexia teachers to become special education certified. And so last year, those that did have a certification, we paid $1,000 stipend. We already pay our inclusion teachers a $2,000 stipend, so we're really just wanting to take that. We're asking them to do the same work, and so just want to take that up to be equitable to that position. All right, so the last two outside of this are our elementary principals are currently on a 220-day calendar. We'd like to recommend a 226. I can tell you that when they're off their calendar, I think it was June 11th, the phone calls did not stop, the hiring didn't stop. So we're really just wanting to pay them for the work they're already doing each year when they get off that calendar. Of course, I did speak to 4 of our elementary principals, and all 4 overwhelmingly said, thank you for the consideration. We feel validated in that. We feel seen, and like the work matters. And so felt like that was a recommendation that we would want to continue with. Our instructional coaches, you guys will remember during our budget conversations, that was a position that we moved their work calendar from 197 to 190, and we're asking to move that back to a 194.
And the additional days basically will generate additional salary for these positions.
That's
so
correct.
That'll bump everyone from the midpoint. I'm assuming, like everything else, it'll bump everybody up based on
Yeah.
where they're at on the scale. Right?
That's right. So their daily rate, based on the fact that they'll be placed in the 200 pay grade, their daily rate's actually about 3% above teachers on the pay scale. That's just the way the comp plan works for those particular positions placed in the 200. It's considered the career ladder pay grade.
And so when we're recruiting, the new salaries that we advertise will be based off of the 226 or the 194.
The 194,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
All right. So the positions listed here are critical positions that were eliminated during our budget discussions to get to a balanced budget. There was a process during that time that we communicated that we would use in order to kind of prioritize how we would add those positions back. It included campus principals and department leaders being able to submit recommendations to senior leadership, and we talked about that and looked at where we needed to add back and felt like where the priorities were. So there was an interventionist that was added to Williams. We had 2 SPED paraprofessionals that we added. We added an instructional coach to Forbes. That was in addition to the one that they had prior to this year. We placed the receptionist back at McCoy that had been moved based on numbers and things that we were doing for budget. We did leave the second AP at Mitchell, and then the bottom here is just a strategic position that was added because we know if we're talking about elementary elementary 12 and middle school 5, we need to consider those salaries if we're going to plan to hire in December.
Mm-hmm.
And the money for those positions is coming from,
This year's budget.
The budget.
and that's what we're pushing into current. So it's going to be an adjustment based off of whatever the adjustment to
Right.
ADA was, that minimal.
Right, and well, and it's, yes, and it's part of the budget
That you already-
added that
yeah.
compensation for those positions.
Okay.
All right, so
It's
back,
factored in.
Yeah, the one that we've already looked at had this already factored in.
Yes.
We're just basically highlighting the fact that what we took away from, to make the budget, now that we have the money, we've already put back.
that's right.
Based
So
on
in
the
addition to the compensation, we considered these positions, and that was worked into the budget numbers that you see.
Yeah.
And as part of those budget reductions, that was, the board had requested that we set up a process, and so we went through that process, and these are the positions that were deemed to be critical.
Fantastic.
All right, so we briefly talked about insurance in June, I believe it was, at the board workshop. And just a reminder, we're moving forward for 25-26 with Blue Cross Blue Shield in Higginbotham is our new third-party administrator. Our current district contribution is $422 a month, and we'd like to recommend an increase to that of $28 that will increase that contribution to $450 a month, and that's a total cost of $512,400.
And we still do not cover 100% of any level of insurance for anybody.
That's correct.
Okay, so let's move to the budget portion to talk about what's changed since June. That first column is old year, 24-25. The middle column is 25-26. Those are the assumptions that we passed the budget in June. And then the last column, that 25-26, is the new law now that the legislative session has finished. So we are still using the demographer's projection of 14,131 students. That's a 1.2% increase from 24-25. That yields us average daily attendance projection of 13,141, which is at a 93% attendance rate. And again, that is adjusted for pre-K. So really our attendance rate is higher, but because we only get the half ADA from the pre-K, we adjust that down. That did change with House Bill 2. However, we don't know the effect yet. From what we understand, we will be getting fully funded for pre-K. However, we will be losing part of our early education allotment. So I think it will be a net-net, but we don't have those numbers, and we haven't gotten information from TEA yet. So our property values before the freeze, we had anticipated, based on our projections, for them to be $24.6 billion. With the new laws that were passed in legislative session, we're now looking at $23.3 billion. Now, most of that is because if you look down to the next row, the homestead exemption increased from 100,000 to 140,000. We did also have growth in the district, so we do have new property. So, some of that decrease is offset by the increase that we have in both commercial and residential new property. So if you go down to the M&O tax rate, the maintenance operations tax rate, which is set by TEA, we're projecting that to be 0.6931. We thought it would, based on our old law, we thought it would compress and go lower, but because the homestead exemption was increased, that offset that decrease somewhat. So we're just seeing a very slight decrease in the M&O tax rate. The next line down is the INS tax rate. We're not projecting a change in that. So the total tax rate will be 1.0506, which is a slight decrease from last year when it was 1.0544. And we will be talking more about the tax rate at the August board meeting. We'll be approving it.
So does that 0.6931 set by TEA? So that increases our tax rate to our people in town. Did that go up because the homestead exemption got larger?
Yes.
Ms. Blank, it actually went down from 24-25, but if the old law would have applied, it would have been compressed even
Right.
more.
I see.
But under the new law, it just went down by a little bit.
Right.
That's right. So the taxpayers never paid
Right.
that middle column because
Okay.
that was just projections in June
Okay.
before, with the information that we had based on the old law.
But it did raise a little because of the exemption, the 1 point.
Right, the way that the formula works,
Yeah.
TEA. So, but compared to last year, it's just a very slight decrease.
But being a recapture district, it means we're just paying less.
We
in
were paying
recapture.
less recapture. So that's good for taxpayers, because that means they're paying less tax, and then we're paying less back to the state. There may be, because we'll set the tax rate in the August board meeting, we'll send the information to the Williamson County Tax Assessor Collector. They take our information and they will tell us exactly what our, the taxes are, the tax roll. So this is just a projection based on what we know, but we will get the actual tax roll from the tax office, and then they will be sending that out also to homeowners so they know. Those go out in the fall, so they know what their taxes will be on their homes. So I just kind of want to move on to kind of highlight, there were lots of changes in House Bill 2. They called it an omnibus bill. It really affected a lot of allotments and other data that have never been used before. And so this is just kind of a summary of the highlight of the ones that have granted us more funding with the passage of House Bill 2. So the teacher retention allotment we already talked about, that will bring us about $3.9 million in additional funding. That is a pass-through from TEA. So we receive that funding, and it will go directly to teachers. They will tell us which teachers, they'll send us that role, and so we're just a pass-through, the district is to pass that on. So for the other compensation that we're talking about, the other funding that we increased was what they called a support staff retention allotment, and that was to help with $45 per ADA for other staff members other than teachers. And that, based on our ADA, is about $500,000 in increased funding. The basic cost allotment is $106 per ADA, and that is to help districts to offset the inflation cost rising for property insurance, utilities, fuel, things that we can't control, but those costs are increasing. And you may recall some of these came at the end of the session. It was kind of a negotiation because you'll see on the next bullet, the basic allotment did not increase as we had hoped when we were talking about this months ago. It increased by $55 from $61.60 to $62.15, so that's our new number, $62.15. But I think going forward, we're going to need to talk about all the allotments because the basic allotment, the funding used to come through that, and we had local control through the basic allotment to determine how that was going to be paid. So now when we're like going forward, when we talk about, okay, we have this allotment, it's just there's more to talk about than just the basic allotment. So that story will be changing a little bit, and that was just the legislative. That was the priority of the way they wanted to fund us. And then the school safety allotment, which we were getting previously, and it almost doubled, which that was about $500,000 in increase. However, we do fund our marshals through a school safety grant, which is expiring. So this is just going to help us offset what, so this wouldn't be new revenue for us. It's just helping us offset what we've already been paying. So again, there are other increases that will be coming to us, but in CTE and some other areas, but we don't have all those right now. So this is just kind of the highlight of the increased funding that we know that has been clarified for us through House Bill 2.
And it sounds like you're anticipating for future sessions, these may be the lanes that we receive money in, or it might be wise if we start to use this as the way we see the budget coming down.
I think so. Probably when, we'll get a lot of wrap-up information, and we're already getting a few legislative kind of summaries, but I think you're right. I think that's what
I
we're
didn't
seeing.
hear what you said.
Right.
I didn't hear what you said.
It's just the idea that there'll be funding tied to specific allotments rather than a blanket, here's X amount per student in the school district. You can decide how to allocate these funds.
So basically, the people who get upset that the federal government tries to take away local control from the states is now trying to take local control away from cities and school districts.
That is not an incorrect summary.
Waiting, I was like, how's it gonna come?
Okay, so let's just kind of take a look at what, how the forecast for the budget has changed. We will be bringing a budget amendment to the August board workshop. And the column on the left is the old law. This, as Amanda talked about, this was the budget we passed in June. We worked with the district leaders and the board and worked very very hard to achieve a balanced budget. And it did not include compensation because we wanted to wait until we knew what the funding would be that we would receive from House Bill 2. So that first column is what the budget that was passed in June before the legislative session was over. We now have our new law, so we have a new forecast for the general fund. And if you look at the total revenues on the left, for the old budget, we were looking at 170.2 million, and now that has reduced to 167.9. That is primarily because of property taxes. Collections will be going down. If you go down one row though, and you look at the recapture payment, it was budgeted at 18.6 million, and it is now projected at 8.6 million. So that's a $10 million decrease of the amount that we will have to send back to the state. So that's really where our gain, that's how it reflects in our accounting, is where we see that gain is the reduction in our recapture. And then, so if you go down to the total expenditures line, that goes from 170.2 million to 160.2 million again. That's a $10 million decrease. So the net surplus that we are projecting is 7,695,861. So that is taking into account the new House Bill 2 funding. So if we go to the next slide, we wanted to take that funding and show you how much the compensation increase that we're suggesting, that we're recommending, will cost, that Amanda went over. So the teacher retention allotment, again, that's the pass-through. That's your 3.9 million, and that's what we're going to spend is 3.9 million. We'll just pass through that from TEA. For our other teachers, for the 0 through 2 completed 1 and 2 years, that increase will be at 394,000. For the 2% at the midpoint, the staff compensation, that's projected to be 1.2 million, 1.3 million if you round up. The other adjustments that we talked about for the stipends and for those other additional recommendations, those will cost approximately $527,000. We talked about the critical positions added back. That's $265,000. Those are the positions that we talked about that we had eliminated during the budget process. Benefits for that added compensation totals about $611,000. We talked about district health insurance contribution increased to $450 a month. That will be $512,400, and so that leaves us with a small surplus of $176,782. That's all I have. Again, we'll talk more. We will have the actual budget amendment at the August board meeting.
Mr. President, trustees, do you have any further questions on the compensation plan as it's been presented?
No questions. I think it's fantastic. I did ask Deb a private question. I feel like I should share it now since I'm excited and proud about his answer. The question was, the teacher compensation increase for teachers was 0 to 2 years. Is that a standard operating practice for a district to fill that gap where there is no compensation?
No, there's only one other district that's done something, and it's not been what we recommended.
So this is Georgetown proactively putting our arms around these young teachers and encouraging them and telling them, like, we value you, we see you, and we got you not only early in your career, but moving forward.
Yeah,
I love it.
Mr. Blankenship, I'd share, if the board hadn't given us direction to get to a balanced budget, there's no way we could be having this conversation. So we took care of the years 0 to 2 because we're in a balanced budget situation.
Sir, I love it. Thank you.
I would like to echo that as well and say thank you for that leadership and that clarification, because we would not be able to do the compensation increase that we are able to do without having a balanced budget and then taking this additional funding and using it for our employees the best way that we can.
Well, I think I can speak for the board and say we appreciate you thanking us, but you all did the work.
Yeah.
It was very much a help us, help you type of situation, and you guys really did have to make the tough decisions. As excited as I think we all are about adding compensation to all employees, which is a tremendous feat on your guys, is just to move all the pieces and figure out how we can stretch this money to give everybody some help. I'm really excited to see critical positions getting added back in as part of this process, because I know there were a lot of sacrifices to get us to this balanced budget that allowed us, like Dr. Howell pointed out, to make these decisions today. So I just want to thank you guys again for that work that has now stretched over a year for us to be able to get to the point where we can finally give something back to you guys for all the work you did. So assuming, I'm making assumptions here, but I'm really excited for that piece of it. So I want to thank you guys. I think we've talked a lot from a board perspective of aligning from the board to the classroom and closing that loop from the classroom back to the board so that we have true alignment. And that work for the board was getting better goals, giving budget clarity, aligning those things to what we're saying. And when we say that we need a high quality teacher in front of our students and we say we want to pay at a certain level for all of our teachers, it's a huge feat, not just from the board, but from our leadership team and from all of you guys sitting around here, to be able to fulfill kind of a year-long, what probably felt like an empty promise to people. We're going to try to get you money at some point. We're going to try to get you money at some point. And so it feels really good that, thanks to your guys' work, that we're able to, hopefully, with a positive vote, fulfill that today.
And recently, when I was at the summer leadership in Fort Worth, I got a couple side eyes from other districts when whoever was teaching would collectively say, everyone in here, your deficit is, you guys are operating from a deficit budget, right? And I'd be like, not Georgetown. Are you serious? No. Yeah, so, and that's because of you guys' hard work, so sure. That wasn't me bragging on me, that was me bragging on y'all.
You got a recommendation for us, Mr. Superintendent?
Yeah, I sure do. Mr. President, I recommend that the board approves the 25-26 compensation plan as presented.
I will entertain a motion to
I so
approve.
move. I'll second it.
And a second, all right. Any further questions or comments before we vote? No? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, guys.
All right, last but not least, there is one small part to this still, is we'd like to ask for action on a resolution to approve retroactive compensation. So really what that means is our employees who have received a paycheck and whose calendar year started before the amended comp plan will receive retroactive pay no later than September.
That's a small percentage of our employees. The majority of our employees are starting past.
That's correct. In fact, probably one thing I should make really clear from questions that have been asked from all of us is teacher pay, the teacher calendar, is always been September to August. So teachers, even with this new approval of the compensation plan, won't see that pay increase until September. For those positions that start in July, those of us sitting around the table, for example, it was old, right? And so with the passage of this
Right, you guys' contracts have already renewed basically, and so
That's
we're just going
correct.
back to the start of current year
Yeah.
for you guys, to match current year for everybody.
That's right. And we do have auxiliary employees, our maintenance department, things like that, that also
Fall under.
work year round, yeah, that we'd really like to see compensated.
And so the couple $100,000 question is probably, is this already included in the budget that we just presented?
It
My
is.
assumption is. It was in there somewhere, but
You still get 176 and some
Yeah.
change, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. President, I recommend the board approve the resolution to approve retroactive pay for the amended 25-26 compensation plan.
I will make a motion to approve retroactive.
I'll second.
all right. Any other questions, comments? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
Thank you.
And then the final action item, I believe the board owns. We had an ongoing discussion around the superintendent's contract. We just finished his full year evaluation, and in reviewing that, we saw some discrepancies in performance versus pay and pay versus surrounding, much like the rest of the district. And Dr. Battle was also the only employee in the last 2 years that has taken a pay cut. And so the board felt there was some need to make some adjustments. And so at this point, I will entertain a motion to do so.
I make a motion to approve the amendments to the superintendent's contract as discussed in closed session.
And I will second that motion.
Awesome. Any other comments from the board or questions before we vote? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Trustees, before we close open session, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to serve in Georgetown, and we will not let this community down. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys for all your work. All right, and now, 3:49 p.m., I will entertain a motion to adjourn the open
so
portion.
I'll second.
Awesome. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. And now we're back to workshop status. So I'll return this back over to you, Dr. Padova.
Mr. President, we have reviewed and kind of crafted these board goals together. We are not taking, obviously we're not taking action on any of this, but I wanted to provide the trustees some time to review the status of where we are right now and perhaps give us feedback to further clarify these goals for the purposes of taking it as an action item in about 2 weeks at the regular board meeting. So this first one, there's this introductory statement. We believe public education is the foundation of the Georgetown community. True to this belief, student performance on state assessments will reflect the high quality of learning experiences taking place in their classrooms. So I'm going to go through all these and then I'll back up to the very beginning so you have time to give feedback. The first one is Georgetown ISD schools will exceed the state on accountability measures. The second one has two options for your consideration. Georgetown ISD schools receiving grades of 75 or better on the accountability system will go from 13 to all 18 by June of 2026, the end of this year. Or Georgetown ISD schools will perform in the top 25 of comparable schools across, the top 25% rather, of comparable schools across Texas. Goals 3 and 4 are actions in Georgetown are student-centered. Literacy is the foundation of student academic success, and building student confidence in mathematics opens career opportunities for students. Goal 3 is the percentage of students on grade level or above in literacy on M-Class will rise from 64% in June of 2025 to 80% by June of 2028. This leads to a goal of 68% for 2026. Goal 4 is the percentage of students on grade level in math on MAP will rise from 59% in June of 2025 to 80% by June 2028. This leads to a goal of 66% in 2026. So I'm going to pause right there and go back to the beginning here. And we're open to feedback from the trustees or questions from the trustees.
I have a comment. If you recall, Dr. Pettiville invited us to be a fly on the wall at the in-service a couple weeks ago, and I did a good job. I was just a fly. I didn't talk, but I listened. And these staff people behind us and their teams were phenomenal. Now, the person you have who was the facilitator was absolutely incredible. But I saw these campuses really work to compare themselves to how they can get to be in the top 25%. Every single one of them did that and developed goals. I like that one because they work so hard on that.
Thank you for that feedback.
I think a couple things. First, from our goal workshop, appreciate you guys doing the work to kind of put a plain language header on these things for us to share public facing. A little bit easier for parents to understand what we're trying to accomplish, and honestly a little bit easier for some of us to understand what y'all are trying to accomplish when we ask these things. So I do appreciate the work to try to provide us that clarity. I think one of the questions, and I'm sure we have a bunch, I always go back to, if we're goal 3 and 4 is 68% by 26 and 66% by 2026, and goal 1 and 2A or 2B are these other, if we accomplish 3 and 4, are we accomplishing 1 and 2? Or are we not setting a bar high enough to fail? And I'm seeing head nods, so it sounds like, I know it's a moving bar because the state doesn't set all those things until much later.
Yeah.
But it sounds like we feel like if we can hit 3 and 4, we'll accomplish 1 and 2.
Yeah, that's a great.
One feels like we're saying 100% of all categories we're going to beat the state, and I know we've had discussions where we're far from that currently. And maybe it's just my understanding of the wording of that goal, but is 66% in math off maths really going to get us clear of the state on all math categories?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And so being able to correlate one with the other is a significant question. Like, will 66% lead to meeting or exceeding the state? And that's a really valid question. Heather, did you have anything to add on that?
Yeah. So goal 3 and goal 4 are talking about K through 8. Goal 1 and goal 2, we're talking about K through 12.
Okay.
So then you're talking about Algebra 1, English 1, English 2, Bio, US History as well. And so there's 5 tests, or 4 tests, I don't know, 5 tests right there that I just had to count, that are included in goal 1 and goal 2, where goal 3 and goal 4, when we're looking at kinder, first, and second, those are screener data that we want to give children an opportunity to become on grade level before we start saying, this is the absolute, this is where you need to be. So there's kind of that runway. So I think it's okay. The other thing we spoke about is going from 64% to 68%, and thinking about if the goal is 100%, really in a perfect world, that's where we want our goals to be, reducing the failure rate by 10%, at least 10% each year would be considerable growth in those areas. And so when you do the math here, 66 is a stretch goal for us in math, and 68 is 0.4 of a percentage point higher.
Yeah, and don't, hopefully you guys aren't taking it wrong. I'm not doubting that those are lofty goals on 3 and 4, that they're worthy goals. I actually like the work we've done to more clearly define specifically what we're trying to accomplish. And so we'll know whether we hit them or not, and then we can assess what we did well and what else we could have improved if it does or doesn't work. My concern is more so, are we setting a goal, one that is so high that if we don't achieve it, now we basically are putting ourselves in a position where we are just failing a goal. What we're saying is goal 1, like whether it really is 1 or not. Like,
this is a great question for the board and our team to really wrestle with, which is, do we want to set a goal that becomes an expectation? This is the way it should be, knowing that even if we fall short, we still have that standard for ourselves, and then we report transparently about it, we measure ourselves by it, but this is the expectation of Georgetown.
I agree with what you just said. I've always
I meant to make it a question.
The answer is yes, especially when there's such a gap between where we are now and where we want to be numerically. I don't think there's a gap in the talent, both in campus leadership and in the students, but the alignment that we're facing now between the board all the way down to the campus leadership is is, I feel like, stronger than it's been, and we're gonna close this gap significantly, but it is significant. Like, we're far away from these numbers right now, if you just look at the numbers.
I would also say that when you look at, depending on the grade level, the assessment, or not the assessment, like the category of approaches, meets, and masters, we're actually within striking distance of a lot of these numbers. And so, you know, I'm really encouraged by the level of focus and alignment that our campus leaders have. And it kind of goes to what Mr. Hurd said at the last board workshop, which is, if we set a bar like, you know, 80% of the measures will be exceeding the state, is that really, are we really okay with that? At, you know, and at the time we were talking about walkthroughs, which we'll get to later, but it's having that goal. And I just want to talk about a little bit of the elephant in the room. I think if, you know, I don't really think of this in terms of, oh, how will this impact how I'm evaluated as superintendent? You know, I think a question for I like having that high expectation. And a question for the trustees is, did we make enough progress for what we expect? And was there enough, you know, through the year progress monitoring that told us, like, we're seeing it, we're adjusting, we're seeing it, we're adjusting?
One filter that I think I'm looking at is, are these feasible and rigorous? Are we thinking about it through both of those terms? One of those terms, and I may be wrong, because goal 1 feels like it may be more rigorous, question mark, is it feasible? And maybe this is the context I'm missing, whereas goal 2B feels like it might be both, feasible and rigorous, based on what I've heard. And Stephanie, thank you for sharing that example from watching the principals. But I don't know if it would be helpful to align on, should the goals kind of check both of those, or just exist in and of themselves?
I mean, to me, it's great to have aspirations, but I'm more motivated if I know what the goal is. I'm going to really work towards whatever that goal is, and I just want to see year-to-year progress. I don't need the tower to be up here, but I need to see that we're making progress towards whatever that goal is. And so the first goal, because we know where we're sitting right now, the bothers me about the first goal is all of our other goals, most of our other goals it's specific. It's measurable and specific. That one is not. And we've already gone through 1 year, like this year, where this is the very same goal that we had this year. It was not measurable, and it wasn't specific, other than it would be 100%. If you're going to do that, it's at 100%. And I just go back to the feasible and the rigorous. You know, I do agree, Dr. Padaville, when you look at the scores where we're falling, there are some meets and masters that we are 1 point away. I mean, totally, we are sitting at about 15. Well, I looked at last night. We're sitting at about 15% of ours are sitting at equals to the state. It seems more reasonable to me that to look at your data to figure out how many of these things are we only a minor points away, a minor point away, and then come up with that number, and then come up with the ones that we really think we can do it, and we come up with a goal that is feasible and rigorous, but that our schools feel like we've taken the time to look at the data to figure out what's reasonable and what's feasible for our schools. So that's my only comment on number 1. On number 2, you know, 2B, I just feel like 2A, we're almost, we've said that for so many years that almost like that's just the way it is. But I like 2B The only thing I would say is, where are we sitting right now? Do we have some schools that are sitting in, they're sitting 1 percentage point below the top 25%?
Actually, they identified that at the workshop.
Okay, but as board members, we don't know that, and we're responsible for coming up with, you know, that we understand this goal. So I would want to see the data. I would want to see, is that reasonable or is that such a stretch goal that it's a source of huge stress because it's not possible to do it?
You know, Ms. Malden, you've given us really good feedback, especially with the feasible and rigorous kind of rubric. I wonder if, just thinking about goal 1, I wonder if there's something we could do to that statement, just working with the board between now and the board meeting, the regular board meeting, where we say Georgetown ISD schools, I'm making this up, will exceed the state on accountability measures, or we will increase the number of areas out of 33 or whatever that we exceed the state, with the ultimate goal of exceeding the state on every measure, something like that.
Yeah, but there be steps
There's
to
steps.
get there.
Okay.
Because I have to agree with Jennifer. Even goal 1, I do see that as measurable. However, it's a moving target.
Mm-hmm.
The state is a moving target as well.
Okay, it's great feedback, thank you.
They're saying on 2B, if we're going to be looking at that, we really need more, I would just need more data.
Yes, ma'am.
More
But it's funny,
information
I had
about-
that circle.
Yeah, yeah.
Talk to her about it, like, what's
Where
that number
we
now?
sitting, I don't know.
So if we're looking at the top 25% of comparables is new in discussions, at least since I've been on the board. But my understanding is that's something that campuses, you're the only campus,
Yeah.
campuses have always had that data available to them.
Campuses have always had that data available to them.
And so this is
and
not
it's
something new.
wonderful. No,
This
it's
will be
wonderful.
a new way to measure, it will be a mystery.
Right.
No. And it's wonderful because if you're a principal that let's say 50% of your
Emergent lending or
are
whatever.
economically disadvantaged, then you're comparing your cohort and you're comparing it against others that are exactly like you.
Right.
And so it's really meaningful, even to the extent of being able to say, if somebody's doing really well, I may go visit them and see what they're doing that I'm not doing. So it's wonderful data as a principal.
And you were a principal, a lot of you guys have tons of the strength. Like, is that true? Is that something that you guys, even you guys in the room, is that something that we used or you guys actually look at and compare yourselves to? Is that more, I guess, is there more validity to you guys in being in that role than maybe the state number that comes out after the fact? Or, I just don't know. I mean, it feels like I'd rather be compared to people who are in the same situation I am to know that if we're succeeding at that level above or below, obviously I want to be above it, but how am I doing against those people versus maybe feeling slighted or like I'm rowing upstream with one paddle because I'm getting compared to something that has distinct advantages over where I'm at. And so on paper, without knowing enough, without having enough depth of how this actually works, that 2B seems to be a lot more meaningful.
I think it personalizes it for the school. But
Right.
Heather, you look like you
Yeah,
wanted to share
Heather,
something.
tell them what they
No?
So,
had
well,
to do.
we had a conversation, Dr. Padaville and I, that when we were principals, we did look at what's called your comp group, and my comp group happened to be a principal in the same district, and I watched her like a hawk. Like, everything she did, I was like, what is she doing? How is she doing that? If I had questions, I asked. I also looked geographically around where I was a principal to see how alike and how different are we? And using that as leverage to say, is that working in your context? What might that look like in my context? And then doing some work around that. And I do attribute that to the success I saw when I was a principal.
I'll echo, I think it's very motivating and very relevant to a principal, much like your experience. We haven't had that conversation in depth here. So it's a new conversation for some principals. some of our principals have been in other districts and have had that conversation for a long time. But across the board, meaningful, motivating, and relevant.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely has that feel, so I like, or I would say I have a preference towards that tweak on it. And then just, I probably need more discussion on goal one. I think it's more of what you said about setting an expectation, not necessarily a goal. Like, our goal is not to master star in this district, it never will be in my opinion. But our goal is to give these kids the foundational tools.
That's right.
That our expectation is they will just automatically do that. And so I think that's where I kind of struggle with the goal. And I know we have differences on that. And so I think that discussion probably needs more work before we get to a final version of it. And then I think I would agree with kind of Janet. If it's just open-ended, we'll never know if we accomplished it. So
It has to be quantifiable.
Exactly, and here Jen saying, like, she wants to be able to provide the staff with like, hey, I met this goal, like,
Yeah.
I succeeded, okay, what's my next step? That, to keep climbing those stairs and get to the goal.
I agree.
Trustees, I kind of moved us past one other, I'll actually revisit this goal. I had some help from Ms. McLaughlin on crafting this one, but it is our responsibility to prepare students for the future. We are committed to increasing the number of students at each high school who meet the qualifying criteria for college and career readiness, in addition to performance on advanced placement and ACT, SAT exams. This also includes the number of students who are prepared to enter the workforce as a result of our CTE certifications. And so your feedback at the last workshop really helped us put more meat on this bone. Goal number 5, the percentage of graduates meeting the criteria of being college, career, military ready will grow from 79% in June 2025 to 90% by June 2026. And there is a whole team and a whole structure that West Vandercheck is part of that's leading to that goal of 90%. So I'm going to pause right there and kind of move us ahead into the academics portion.
Can we look at goal
Oh, yeah.
4,
Yeah.
the same lines? And Heather, I may have heard this when you were explaining this earlier, but I'm trying to understand where we are getting the 68% and the 66, making sure those also feel feasible and rigorous.
Yeah. So I think, I don't know, maybe day 20, day 21. So just back of the napkin math. If we think in a perfect world we want 100%, even though the goal is set at 80, if we would want 100%, when you're setting goals, you want to think about reducing the failure rate by 10% each year. So we set a goal of 58, which would be 4.2 would be the failure rate. In this case, we exceeded the goal, we hit 64, so the failure rate is 36%, so 3.6%. So adding that to the 64 gets you to 67.6, rounding up to 68. Okay, but for math, when you do that same algorithm there, you end up at 63 because the goal with 59, 100 minus 59, right? And then doing 41, 59 plus 4.1 is where you end up at 63%. But we set 66, and I think that seems like a nice stretch goal in that we know we're focusing a lot on math this year. We're holding ourselves accountable to doing this work. When we get into academic alignment, you'll see that this math, the work around math keeps coming up, so that feels like an appropriate goal, but it is a little bit of a stretch. It's a little bit higher than the reducing the failure rate by 10%.
Thank you. That's
Yes.
helpful. I've been wanting to know where this comes from and if they like kind of hit our bar, so that's all. Yeah.
Steve, do you have any other questions on the goals as we previewed them for you? I'm going to hand it off to Heather Petrozzini and Jen Carney to give you a little bit of forecasting about what is our strategy to see our schools, to support our schools in this journey through the academic program.
Right. So, thank you, Dr. Padaville, and thank you, trustees. We've kind of, a little wind here is nice, keeping me cool. So as we've kicked off this year, we have 3 instructional priorities that Dr. Padaville has set for us. High-quality tasks aligned to standards, observation and feedback for growth, and timely response to data. And these are going to be sort of the cornerstone, and we're going to use these as levers across the year to make sure we have academic alignment and support for our campuses, but also from a central office perspective, how are we making sure that we're supporting this work and happening? So when we think about high-quality tasks aligned to standards, we want to think about the verb in the standards. So if it says analyze the capacity of these objects, of a given set of objects, we're not having students, I always use the example, like color in what a gallon looks like. We want them to actually have that hands-on learning experience, and they're going to be able to talk about it, they're going to be able to discuss it, they're going to say why the gallon is more than the pint and all of that. But we want to have the activity aligned to what the verb is saying at a minimum. Really, we would like you to go a little bit further, but at a minimum, that needs to be there. We also want to make sure that in our classrooms every day, our students are getting meaningful feedback so that they know how they can improve, but that's also sort of a cascading goal that we want to also give that type of feedback to our teachers and our administrators as we're supporting students in their learning. So everybody learns best when you have bite-sized, actionable feedback. We're not overwhelming you with the 15 things you can do better. We want to talk about today, this is the one thing you can work on. I'm going to cycle back. And whether you're a student, I'm going to cycle back and talk to you about it, or you're a teacher or you're an administrator, I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about this again. And then timely response to data. And this is where we know when we teach a concept, quite often, some students aren't going to get it. Let's not wait until students don't get it to plan for intervention. We want to plan for intervention and enrichment at the outset, as opposed to saying, oh, look at the assessment and 40% of my class didn't get it, now let me plan for intervention. So let's go ahead and identify those misconceptions early on and make sure that we have a plan to address that as we're teaching that. So those are our instructional priorities for this year, and this is kind of how we're centering and grounding all of the work that we'll be doing here at Hammerlin, but also out on campuses with principals. And the piece that we want to be clear about is we know that these instructional priorities will help us develop our students in achieving the skills and dispositions that are articulated in the learner profile. That these aren't in isolation or in lieu of, but we want students that can get out into the world and show that they're from Georgetown ISD and have these strong skills and dispositions, and we know that these 3 priority areas are going to help us get there.
So just like almost like a glossary of terms, I just want to kind of ground us in some key systems here. So the first is a practice we had last year that we're going to continue our campus support team meetings. There's a cadence for that, they're already scheduled, and that's something where district staff will be visiting with the principal and their instructional leadership team and understanding what does effective support look like, what are the needs, what does progress look like. The next, the principal supervisor and the chief academic officers will have scheduled regular visits to schools. We will be doing district and campus monthly evidence reviews to be able to kind of monitor progress over the course of the year. There'll be principal observation accountability checks. In terms of doing walkthroughs, we want to have a way to give our campuses feedback about are we doing walkthroughs and what does the structure of walkthroughs look like, and are teachers getting that feedback in a way that makes sense in alignment to our strategic goals. Ms. Petrozzini talked about, not Dr. yet, almost. Timely response to campus and district assessments. We are going to structure that at the district level to support our campuses as well. And then lastly, something you're going to see in our governance calendar is this cadence of campus sharing with the district, the performance indicators, district sharing with the superintendent, superintendent reporting to the board, so that there's that alignment and there's no mystery in how are we doing over this year.
So we know that all of this work still is rooted in our vision and our mission of our vision, home of the most inspired students served by the most empowered leaders, and our mission, empowering every learner to lead, grow, and serve. And we know that all of our students deserve the opportunity for a rigorous, aligned, and engaging learning every day. And we've talked a lot this summer about the word all and who all really is. And that we've thought about through the lens of students who are receiving special services with our SPED department and our multilingual department. Those are part of our all, and so the work is rooted in that and through that lens. Furthermore, we know that this work requires clarity for our teachers, which equates to confidence for our students. We always say kind of the cliche, clarity is kindness, but it's really true. And this work is about obviously transforming our daily learning experiences. It was said earlier in the board meeting, high quality teacher in front of our students is a must, and that's what we're about. That work is rooted in all the research, and we know the most important person in a student's life is this teacher in front of the classroom. So we don't take that lightly, and we're investing in that heavily. So our strategic actions are around this work. I think you've heard a lot of talk this summer and early spring around the work with our literacy program at the elementary level with SABIS for our RLA and SLRA. SLR, it's just easier to say. So we adopted My View, and our coordinators have worked with teachers across the district this summer to align equitable services for all of our students, the word all again, right? And we've sought feedback from principals ahead of time before it's ever touched the teacher's hands. And then we've also had teachers come in who were not part of the curriculum writing team as sort of consultants to the work to ensure that what is needed is present in the documents. We fully anticipate having to pivot and make adjustments when this gets played out, but we really feel like we're in a very sweet spot. We are also engaging in the Strong Foundation grant, the LASSO grant through TEA, and that work has already begun. And this work is here to help us ultimately create a framework for math K through 12. And so what that entails also is professional learning also. We started that work last week with our first training with the Education Elements, who's our consulting team on this project. So PLCs and coaching structures supporting teacher confidence. What I want to say about that is that there's some intentionality behind the words instructional coach. We moved from learning and design coach to instructional coach, and that means something different. And so we're investing heavily on how teachers are supported in the classroom and how we support our coaches, so that everyone is presenting and sharing information so all our students are getting what they need.
Jen, not to put you on the spot, but if you had to summarize in just like a few words, what would feel different for teachers on the campus compared to what they may have experienced in the past?
The lens through Learning Design Coach was that it was more about the work being presented in front of students. It was about the level of engagement in front of students. And we don't want to take away that opportunity to create engaging work. That's not at all what we are saying. But we also know that sometimes our teachers may need help with pedagogy and instructional practices that happen in the classroom. So it's not necessarily about the handout in front of the student. It's not necessarily about some of the sort of antiquated things that we've been doing in the past. We're now leveraging our response to teachers' needs and supports in the model where we're responding to our teachers in real time
about the work that students are engaging in and making sure that it is aligned to the standard. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's more about being boots on the ground and coaching folks in the
Less
classroom.
behind the scenes.
That's right.
More about modeling, being there.
Yes,
Absolutely.
thank you.
I'm sorry, I had a quick question. So when we roll out a new curriculum like we are with Sabas, can you just help me understand when the kind of the timeline for the teachers to get their arms around this, and have they started that process
Yes.
yet? Okay, good.
They've started it today
Oh.
with new teacher orientation and our new teacher academy. They've engaged in it. But also previous to today, our July sessions, we've had a lot of face-to-face opportunity with our teachers to engage in it, so that they not only become familiar with the Sabas platform, MyView platform, but also they understand how the MyView platform aligns to our district platforms and how all of that's tied together. And then we will continue that work the end of this week. This is a big week. The end of this week, the 7th and 8th, as we bring teachers in for district professional development as well. And then that is going to be ongoing support. So, and I'll get to some of that too, but for sure. And then alignment between instructional leadership team, vision setting, and coaching support. I think I've kind of tapped in on that, so I'll keep this going. Okay. We know that our instruction last year was focused on what we're teaching and how we're teaching it. That's where we were in the PLC process, and that's sort of unapologetic. That's just where we were, and I'm speaking globally as a district. Some campuses may have been a little further ahead, some not as far. This year, we know if we are going to be the agency of change, we really need to also focus on there are 4 questions in the PLC process, and what do we do when students don't learn it? That's the intervention approach, and what do we do when students do learn it? That's how we extend it. And so that is also very well articulated in our curriculum documents, so that our teachers can have ideas and resources at their fingertips on how this works for our students.
Is that new or newly revised?
A lot of revision this year. We've included supports that also are for modifications in our elementary documents as well, and then revision. And I would say our extension has been greatly revised, so that our classroom teachers are also able to support our gifted and talented students in the classroom as well.
Thank you.
I don't, there. Okay, our next slide is, Heather mentioned the I can statements. And this is about, really mostly, it's about empowering students, so students know what they're going to learn and why they're going to learn it. And so Dr. Padaville has already shared that this is an expectation that our classrooms teachers have, is that they create I can statements, so that students know the what and the why. But we also have included I can statements in our curriculum documents as a sort of a launch pad. And then you'll see some of those I can statements have hyperlinks, the blue, so that they're spelled out and more supported for our teachers.
And trustees, I just want to be very transparent with you. This is a reasonable expectation to have the I can statement posted in the classroom. And what we want to do is we don't want it, observation and feedback is really important, right? And so we don't want administrators having to sort through files to figure out what is the objective of the day. Rather, if they can directly see the I can statement and see the verb and the concepts that are supposed to be taught, they can make a accurate evaluation of, is the student task on target with what the student should be learning.
This may be age, but back in the day, these used to be like SWOTs or the
Mm-hmm.
standard posted. What's really cool is putting this in like the voice of the students.
The students.
That's nice. Yeah.
Right,
I like this.
that's who our audience is. That's why we're here. And we know that when students are able to articulate why they're learning and what they're learning and why they're learning it, it has a huge effect size on their overall performance and success academically. So it's very important work. Evidence of change, instructional walkthroughs focused on curriculum in action. This is some of the evidence we saw last year in our high school, middle school, and elementary classrooms. But it also is rooted in things that you can't see. It's also rooted in what you hear. What level of questioning is going on? How are kids engaging in discourse when they're in the classroom? That sort of thing. And so as we walk classrooms as an instructional team, those are things we're looking for. Are students able to talk about their learning and use academic language? Are they able to write about it and express themselves? That sort of thing. And it doesn't have to be teacher to student, it can be student to student as well. This is something I'm really excited about, our unit internalization. Our teachers spend a lot of time internalizing lessons, thinking about how they're going to show up every day. This is a new process we're taking our instructional coaches through. We will be meeting monthly we'll be meeting more frequently than monthly, but once a month at minimum, we will be going through unit internalization protocol with our instructional coaches. And this helps ensure that the thought of planning for intervention and extension is being taken care of. It's not dismissed. It's happening ahead of time so that when the ICs go back to campus and are working in their PLCs, they have a resource to go to. It's also going to be housed so that our principals can access these unit internalization documents so that when they're walking classrooms, it helps empower them to ask questions, coaching questions, and get feedback, that sort of thing. So pretty excited about that. It's a 5-step process, and each, where the arrow is, there are spelled out questions. There's about 2 or 3 questions for each of those to help really unpack the unit and help ICs feel really empowered to go back and do that work. Finally, this isn't necessarily new, but something that we need to continually elevate. I think as the year gets underway and the busyness of what happens goes on throughout the year, is that we, as an instructional team, as a teaching and learning and assessment team, we need feedback too. We rely a lot on our quantitative feedback at the bottom, our MAP, our in-class, STAR, and our CFAs, our common formative assessments. That obviously gives us a lot of feedback. We can see where there might be holes in our curriculum and how we will fill it and do fill it. But we also need qualitative feedback where we're getting teacher input. And especially in a year such as this one where we have a new resource that our teachers are going to be engaging in. We have a feedback link on our curriculum website, and it takes it to a Google form which we check regularly. There are times when there's an option at the end of the feedback form where the teacher can stay anonymous if he or she chooses, but also there is an opportunity for them to put their name in if they want like one-on-one feedback or help in that particular area. But ultimately you look at that and sometimes we have to pivot right on a dime and make changes for units moving forward to help support the teachers, and other times it is more appropriate to address some of those needs for summer curriculum writing process. So looking ahead, I feel like I'm going on here. Looking ahead, this is the work we are focusing on, is deepening our math instruction, refining curriculum resources, maintaining and enhancing literacy. I know we've talked a lot about math, but I don't want to just take away from the fact of the work that was done last year is going to continue and still be a huge area of focus. And then supporting our campuses with walkthroughs, our PLCs, and data review.
Thank you. So that's sort of at at the classroom level, what's happening and how our teachers are going to be well supported. Now we're going to swing to the other side and talk about the great work our principals and their instructional leadership team did July 22nd and 23rd. And we all came together and we really spent some time, 2 days, understanding our current reality. Where are you as a campus, pulling up the comp group reports, and then designing some plans around that. And this included some intentional goal setting around where are you right now, and based on what you know, where do you want to be this time next year when we come together. So you'll see in the top there, Ms. Moore back there. She's in the top working with her instructional leadership team. We have Jennifer Guidry down here in the bottom left. This is the Georgetown high school team, and then this is everybody when we were all together with KT accountability on day 2. So we wanted to highlight a few of the work products that our teams did. So this is an example from Tippett, and I'm going to walk you from left to right what this work looked like. They understand where they're currently at, and then where they want to be a year from now. So currently at a 76, next year want to be at an 81. But what does that mean for the work that students do in the classroom each day? What would you expect that work to look like if you were going to get there? So putting students at the center so that we can start to back that out. If that's what you know you want for students, what will that mean for the pedagogy, for the instruction that happens in the classroom each day? What do our teachers need to be thoughtful about? What do they need to think about? What do they need to plan for? And how can we help them do that? So it's students and then teachers. If you know what you want for teachers, then what do you want for your instructional leadership team? What do they need to monitor? What do they need to consider when you're planning for staff meetings, when you're planning for instructional rounds, when you're planning for walkthroughs? That helps you also plan for that targeted feedback that you're giving teachers. We know we want to see discourse. I know that I know when I'm in that classroom that we need to be talking about discourse. So then what does this mean for the administration on the campus? And then everybody's favorite part, what do you want to tell central office to support you in? And these were really great. So we thought Tippett's was just really articulates left to right across the boxes what this would look like. Another one that stood out to us is Dr. Harris at Cooper. How will they keep this B and keep going, or go from a C to a B? And hers is very aligned. One thing that really stood out on this plan was that not only are we addressing the academic, but she's also addressing the behavioral. Sometimes you cannot get to the academics until we get to the behavioral. And again, left to right, went so far as to say her responsibilities, the assistant principal's responsibilities, the instructional coach, and the counselor. And then my favorite part over here is she gave us by name what I need from you, which was really helpful when
You're on there.
I know, I'm on there twice.
Yeah, back to back.
But it was really helpful when I started to look through it and to say like, okay, let me flag that for myself. But then as I've been looking through these over on the right side, sharing with Ms. Carney about how do we think this part through as a teaching and learning leadership team to make sure all arrows are pointed in the right direction of programmatic support out on campuses.
You know, I want to give Heather and Lindsay credit. They really developed this structure, and the way this helps us is, I'll just speak selfishly. A lot of times when I visit a campus, it's just a lot of, hey, what's on your mind? How are things going? Just real super open-ended. This gives us a structure to not waste the principal's time. We clearly know what the principal said they should be looking for out of students, and we clearly know what support looks like for them. So our conversation becomes really focused about what are we talking about, are we doing the right things, and are we seeing what we thought we would see?
And I had a great partner in developing this. We had a lot of fun. We did. It was like, took us a minute, but we got excited.
A lot of dry erase boarding.
Yeah, a lot of dry erase boarding. But this is just kind of a protocol. What's interesting too is that I tweeted this out over the weekend, and random people started messaging me like, hey, can I have that form? Because it just had that, I think because it helps you think linearly. So that was exciting. From that, campuses did that work in their rooms, but then they came back in the whole group, and from all that work they did on those dry erase board or on the posters, what does this mean for a goal for you? If that is what your plan is for the year, what are 3 to 5 goals? And we want to just kind of shout out Carver and Forbes, the level of specificity in their goals. Carver's goal on the bottom really stood out to me, reduce the number or percentage of students 3 through 5 who scored a 0 on the RLA, so the reading extended constructed response. So that when you get that specific, then you start to think, and if you look at our plan, what does it mean to write in all content areas? What support do we need to give our teachers? And then so forth down. And then Forbes were really SMART goal format of, they are getting very specific about 100% of teachers or students. So these were just 2 that really stood out to us. The little post-it notes are their commitments. You can write a goal, but without a commitment, you're just, you know, signing up for Weight Watchers, like I told everybody. That's a goal. You signed up for a goal, but you got to do some commitment work around it. So throughout this, I mean, we've all done that, right? Everybody signed up for something that you didn't actually commit to. Throughout all of this, though, we are looking at some key performance indicators across the year. And so all campuses will monitor student group performance. That's some of the work you saw Dan Brown sharing about, looking at student groups and understanding how different groups are performing in relation to others. That also contributes to your comp group scores along the way. And then all of our screeners, math and M-class, so math and reading, screening assessments, common formative assessments, but then we are also breaking this down across elementary, middle, and high school, so that we clearly know what we're looking at. And where we'll be looking at those is within our campus support team. So these are the meetings where we come together. We'll be coming once a quarter. For most schools, our priority schools will have it once a month, where we can really look at the data, celebrate successes, identify those challenges, and get very specific on what support looks like to move this work. And sometimes that might mean, hold on, let's all really dig into this one thing, because we know this has leverage across another area. So reading comprehension is going to have leverage in math. So kind of going through all of that, and then understanding, are there islands of excellence? Are there necessary teacher supports that need to be put in place? From there, the campus, along with the campus support team, which is the campus and their instructional leadership team, but also some of us from central office there to really understand. So we'll also hear trends and patterns across schools. What's the action plan? What success can we leverage in challenging areas? And then how will we implement this? And then how will we progress monitor? Giving campuses some time to implement and really, you know, start to see if it's working, and then gathering evidence. And then once they start gathering that evidence, it's usually time for a campus support team meeting again. And so it's a sort of a cyclical process, a cycle of continuous improvement.
Heather, is that like a 4 to 6 week process, or?
It depends on the campus. So we'll do quarterly for most campuses. So give them a couple weeks to get started, and then doing probably 4 or 5 weeks in. And I think they're set up about every 6 to 8 weeks per campus. Our priority campuses will be more frequent.
Heather, this looks fantastic. Thank you so much. I know you're early in this process. Can you give me kind of your thin slice on campus leadership's reception to this? Is there buy-in?
I can say that I know many of you are doing this work with your campus teams, because you can take this and replicate this down to the classroom level. So if this is what I want for a teacher, this is what I want for my students, this is what I need to do as a teacher, which means I need this on the other side of it. You know, it kind of shortens the boxes a little bit, but a lot of them have said they're doing that work. I was at GHS today, they're doing this work with their department chairs tomorrow, so I can speak to that.
Yeah. Okay, and your thin slice around it then is that, you know, Devin said something early when he started here that stuck with me. I just want to make sure that they are feeling like this is something that we're doing like with them, not to them, right? Like, is that accurate?
I hope so.
Is that accurate?
Yes, those are nice.
You can't say no now.
But I appreciate that question, and I think that's, as Lindsay and I talked through this, kind of what does that mean for us? It's really easy to say, what are all the things that you think should be happening in these 4 columns? I mean, it's easy for us to say that to people. I think what's more important is that campuses get a chance to say to us, and this is what I need from you to make this happen.
And I'll build on that. I was out at 2 campuses today doing coaching, and we talked about this, but then we also talked about there's a box on our coaching agenda that's really, so what does this time need to look like in order to support what you and your campus have built out there? So I don't know that it's changing work. I think it's creating this consistent conversation and really targeted and focused, which I do think always feels good to them. More clear, and we're having the same conversation versus feeling like when Lindsay walks in, I'm talking about this and we're working on this, and I'm left with the impression this is important, and then somebody else does, and it's, you know, I may have different impressions. So I think there's always gratitude for that.
You know, to be fair, we have high expectations for ourselves, right? And so, but we still trust the principal to figure out the how, because they're ultimately the one who has to execute what does school improvement look like. So, a superintendent, if anyone's guilty of, I don't know, doing something to people, those bottom 3 components of high quality and aligned student learning tasks, observation and feedback for growth, timely response to data, those are priorities and expectations set by me. But all the other fields are empty, right? We're trusting the principal and their team to figure out, okay, what's important for us as we go through this work.
That's great. Thank you.
So I've been getting back, so that kind of, and I do hope it does feel that this is yours, this is a place for us to start a conversation from, as opposed to us coming in and just saying, I want to see your high quality tasks aligned to standard. It's, you said you want this, you know, you want discourse, let's look at collaboration around this, because that's going to be high quality task aligned to the standard. So this is sort of our continuous improvement cycle, but built from the campus level instead of just from a central office perspective. And again, this comes back to the heart of what we're doing this year, really being very specific. The ICANN statements have considerable leverage, and they're fun too, because when you get to say to a student, what are you doing today? And they tell you, like, I'm analyzing a piece of argumentative text, and they're, you know, that's fun to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it.
I love the I can't statement, because I'm going to 8th grader that does say, I don't know why I need to know this.
Yes.
So now it's right there. This is why you need to know this and how you can apply this. So
I wish I could tell you it gets better even
No,
later,
no,
but it's not. So, I don't know, it's like the shoemaker's child, right? Like, I don't need this. So, we'll be bringing you frequent updates throughout the year, and this is in your governance calendar. We did kind of mark and stamp on here that accountability, 2024 accountability and 2025 accountability will come mid-August. And then from there, we'll start talking about all the other data pieces that we're gathering, our turnaround plan progress, and updating you on assessment data as we start to have it in, because we know that we want our students to show what they know. It's not about taking the test, it's show us that you know all of this. And with that, I think I hand it to him.
Thank you both for letting me talk for just a minute about the priority campuses. Most of the principals are here, so I want to make sure you know who they are. Our principal of the Pearl Premise is here, Dr. Jennifer Spears. Frost Elementary Principal Megan couldn't be here today. Megan couldn't be here today, Megan Chambly. But we do have Dr. Jennifer Henson, Williams Roadrunners Principal here, over here. New principal Melanie Moore, Mitchell Mavericks principal is here. And we have Dr. Angie Harris, the new principal of the Cooper Cougars is here. And I think that's all of you, right? I do also have the joy of working for Carver, but we're not going to call it a high priority campus anymore, but she is here as well.
Principal Harris, that was you that put Heather on there on blast, right?
She did, yeah.
Strong word.
And then last night I did send her something saying, I don't know what this means. She's like, it's linked on there. Okay, got you. Got you.
So working with these, just kind of wanted to let you know, board members, who is new. There are several new people at Cooper. We have a new principal, Dr. Harris, and new assistant principals, Carla Stewart and Holly Rogers, coming from different schools. At Frost, just a new assistant principal, Kim Fromberg, coming from Lake Travis. Mitchell, do have a new principal, Melanie Moore, coming from Pearl. And new assistant principals, Jake Schmidt, coming from Frost, and Megan Conley Mays, coming from Austin ISD. Pearl, we have a new assistant principal, Joe Barrientos, coming from Pflugerville ISD. And at Williams, we have a new assistant principal, Elisa Barrientos, coming from preschool and in previous districts. And then just last slide, I'd just like to let you know that we do have, although we're very focused on all campuses, we're hyper-focused on these 5 campuses. And the additional supports that will be there, see, I really do need to stand up because somebody's head. These coaching meetings with the principals and me, I said at least twice a month. I've been going out more regularly lately. But instructional walks on campus by Heather and myself, we will be going every other week together. We'll be having regular attendance. I'll be going to the PLCs, MTSSs, and other campus meetings. Already been doing some of that. And then we're going to add an additional meeting that I haven't really told them all about yet. We're going to have a 1-hour meeting a week, just a 1-hour meeting with the high priority principals and myself, so they can just talk about what it means to be a high priority campus. And then the campus support team meetings that Heather has talked about already. The goal, absolutely, is to be sitting here next summer and telling that there are zero high priority campuses, 0 Ds, and 0 Fs. And I know that these principals are very committed to this. Do you have any questions about high priority campuses?
Yeah, I guess maybe an overall question is, how much coaching observations do most teachers get, like within a month or whatever time frame we use? And then when I look at this, and I may be wrong, I think this is also a lot of commitments needed from the instructional team, while they also need to fulfill like their commitments to their campus duties. So what supports do these campuses have to get this done in addition to their ongoing like observation support they've got to get teachers?
In terms of the instructional coaches and the instructional leaders on the campus, there's nothing extra for them. It's just that I will be there, Heather will be there. We're going to be there more to observe them and help them coach them. So nothing more for them. The only thing that's been added is that 1-hour meeting of the priority campuses, and I'm going to tag it on to the elementary principals meeting each month, so it won't be a different day or anything. So we really won't be taking them away anymore. I think that Heather, Heather, Lindsay, and I are still working on exactly how many observations there will be of teachers each week in terms of campus leadership and district leadership. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so last year the commitment was 10 walkthroughs a week per administrator. And so as you start to think about the size of a campus, everybody could get at least one a month from each administrator to, we need to be giving frequent feedback, but it's also the feedback cycle around it. So I gave you this feedback in Strive or in a Google form. I also need to have a conversation with you on the other side of it. So that does start to get to be a time commitment. And so building structures, and principals and assistant principals get really creative with how they're going to do that. I'm going to pull you in the hallway real quick and talk about it. Now you go try it. Come to my office and let's have a 10-minute conversation. It really is one of those systems that needs to be human dependent on what's going to work for the campus and how they're going to get through it all. But that's a good, I mean, that's the conundrum.
It's challenging.
It can
How
be
to get all this.
challenging.
And you know, the elementary schools have that additional time added, so I know y'all are thinking about all of that, but just my first take is like, it's a lot.
You know, our principals are working on that. Dr. Harris, could you speak about the additional time you figured out how to give your teachers?
Yeah, so we've all kind of come up with that extra 45 minutes every 2 weeks. I was just sharing our schedule this morning and looking at how I was trying to really back it up to a lunch. I know it sounds silly, but backing it up to something else, backing it to a special, backing it to a lunch, or doing something like that really does create a nice long block for our teachers where they can sit down and do some deep work. It's, you know, I was just sharing with how we're trying to do our schedule in that way. We're trying to be pretty intentional. Like you said, time is such a huge thing. We're trying to be very intentional with our schedule. So our PLCs are on, our team leads are meeting with the instructional coach on Monday after school. Our PLC is Tuesday. Our extra time block is Wednesday. So basically the instructional coach is able to meet with the team lead and get the plan together. And then on Tuesday, the PLC happens where the instructional coach is sort of facilitating that team and disseminating that plan. And then on Wednesday is the extra time to do the stuff, right? So that even just doing little things like blocking it up to a lunch or a special or something like that gives them time to sit together, eat, talk, do, and a little bit more relaxed. So that's kind of what we're trying to do, but it is tricky. Time's not easy.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Harris.
That's our wrap.
Trustees, do you have any other questions or feedback for our team? You can see this, what was just shared kind of provides some of the bones for frequent feedback to the Board of Trustees over the course of the year.
I think it's incredible. I think it's very thorough, so thank y'all. I mean, y'all got something that captures every detail from goals at the top all the way to what that looks like in the teacher's classroom. So it's clear there's been a lot of thought and care put into this, so I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate that. I mean, right now it's a plan, right? So now we have to execute.
I think the only other thing I appreciate, there's a subtlety to shifting and empowering your guys as people at the campus level and even our kids. So the simple things that I can, giving them the tool to fill in, but letting them take accountability and empowering them to make these plans transfers that ownership down and allows them to kind of shine within their own strengths. So I think I'm really encouraged. I think I can see now. So I guess I just want to say thank you for sharing the level of detail. We don't always get this at the board. And so I think I'm really encouraged to see how you guys are going to accomplish some of those goals. And maybe we could have flopped and put this first, and it would have had less questions on the goals, because I think it clarified a lot of kind of what we were struggling with. So I think it's going to make your conversations easier in the next week.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, Ms. Gardo, I just want to speak to something you mentioned. You know, in terms of the demands on our campus leaders, their job has, just like teachers, has never been harder than it is right now. And so I trust this team to figure out, to borrow your phrase again, what's feasible and rigorous, because we want, it's better to execute and have our approach done well rather than try to do everything, right? And so there'll be some stop and starts, and that feedback with the principals, the high priority school meetings, the coaching meetings that we have, we'll do some calibration about where do we want to lean in and where are things that it's not as high leverage and we need to spend more time elsewhere.
Thanks, Jerry.
All right, trustees, that concludes our board workshop.